Welcome to Conscious Leadership Life. I'm Meg Dennison, and today I'm talking with Robyn Smith. Robyn is an award-winning speaker and master trauma communication and relationship coach for women. She is the founder of Rock Your Relationship movement, and she's helped thousands of women transform frustration into fulfillment by cultivating deeper, more conscious and loving connections. With her thriving 23-year marriage as inspiration, Robyn combines practical relationship strategies with emotional healing to create lasting change. Her approach goes beyond communication, reshaping how women experience love and connection. As a certified master trauma coach, she specializes in helping clients break free from trauma and unhealthy patterns, restoring harmony within relationships and within themselves. Welcome, Robyn. So
Hi.
great to see you.
Great to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, what we're talking about really is communication and how women can communicate in their relationships. Because a lot of people don't even know what's possible when you have empowered and healthy communication in your relationship. So, can you just start off right there? What is possible when you have healthy communication in your relationship, and why is it so important?
I love your question. Thank you for that. And it's what people tell me they want. Like, I want to communicate better, and I think that a main, so we can think of the communication as the means to the end, right? So what's the end that you're really wanting? That what people tell me they want is to feel heard, to feel understood, to have a sense of like, you get me. Like, and that, we all want, I think we all long for that, to really feel like seen and gotten. And so when we have empowered and healthy communication, that gets way more possible. Also, when you have this healthy communication, you get to feel, especially like with your partner or people you're working with, or even other family members, like you're on the same team. You're going forward together instead of fighting each other or antagonists in your process. So that is such a nice feeling compared to the alternative.
Yeah.
You get to feel more connected. You get to feel more supported. You get to feel closer. So all those kind of go
Mm.
together, obviously. When your communication is harmonious, you're feeling heard and understood. And along with that, in my experience and the experience of a lot of my clients, is there's just more ease. You don't
Yeah.
feel like you're having to work as hard to get your point across, to feel like you're getting that, again, heard and understood. It's just happening organically because you're using words that work. You're using tones and phrases that can be heard, and just things flow better. So
Yeah.
that's what whole is possible when you have.
Yeah. So I think that one of the things that really resonates with me is being gotten, because also as a coach, I understand that that's what people want. They really want people to understand them. And so then, what stands in the way of being gotten? So what are the big communication pitfalls that you see with your clients?
Yeah. These are my top three. There are many others, but when I think of the top three, it's blame, criticism, and defensiveness. And I'm going to break those down. But I think a lot of us are just born into a family, a community, a society where that's very kind of normal in our culture, in our language style. And it's normal as part of being a human being, I think, that we just tend to default to these. So blame is when you're basically pointing the finger and you're using often you statements. You did this. Why did you do that? How come you're so this? So the problem with blame is it tends to create distance. People tend to want to blame back or defend themselves when they feel like they're being blamed. It can feel like an attack. So that's why it's in the way of connection, because it actually creates the opposite generally. It's like pushing someone away. And then criticism is like next level blame. It's like, instead of pointing out someone's faults about what they did or said, it's more like telling them they are the problem. It's more of a personal attack, like you're an idiot, or you're so, what were you thinking? How could you be so stupid? why are you so slow? Whatever it might be. So really attacking more someone's style or kind of personality. So it hurts more. And so again, it's not going to bring you closer when you use criticism, but yet it's really common in our language and like as a default. And then the third one is the defensiveness, which I've already mentioned, but it's often the response to blame or criticism. So when you use blame or criticism, you're probably going to experience someone getting defensive with you. And then defensiveness is like trying not to let that hit you, that blame or criticism that feels like a punch or a stab, so you put up a wall so you don't get hurt by it, and you push back. And it so it can be like an excuse, making excuses, or again attacking back, or um, kind of explaining your way through. Like if someone's blaming, why didn't you take out the trash? Well, because of this and this and this. And so again, you just don't get what I mentioned was possible earlier when you're using any of those three. So that's why they're pitfalls. They really get in the way of connection, feeling supported, feeling heard and understood. Other things that we could add to the list might be shutting down. Some people they just button it and they walk away. They don't engage at all. So that's another communication pitfall, which is zero communication. um, and then like hiding your truth, right? Not being authentic is another one we could add to the list. Again, I could go on, but we'll keep it simple with those.
Yeah, and I want to say that I think that I'm probably like a lot of people that I actually didn't even know that I was blaming and criticizing in my relationship.
Yeah.
Didn't really even know that, because it's kind of a lot of it is that it's, the sea you're swimming in, it's the soup you're in. I didn't even recognize it until I saw someone else. When I saw a coach, like, and a couple, like, they were relating in a way that I had never experienced.
Right. I would 100% agree. Most people don't get that they're doing that. I was brought up in a household of blame, so I didn't know any better, right? It was just like, oh, who did this? Who did that? So, yeah, I think that's such a great point that we can't see that soup until someone points it out.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And so the other thing is, so that's blame and then criticism. We think that we're going to make somebody better by criticize them, right?
Yeah.
But when in fact, what happens is that they get defensive and they move away.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me show you how wrong you are and how you should do it my way, or,
Yeah.
doesn't really
Yeah.
help people grow or open towards you, or yeah.
Yeah. But when you've been doing that, like your whole relationship, like I've been married like 38 years, and I would say the first 25 of those years, my husband and I engaged in all of those behaviors until we learned not to. And the results, the when you learn not to do those things, when you learn a different way, you can be different in your relationship.
I just took a big breath. It's so refreshing, right? Like you didn't know it could be different until you
Yeah.
shift, and then it's like, we don't have to be hurting each other all the time or like defending ourselves, or yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's awesome that you made it through all that. I know for a lot of couples it feels so horrible that they don't stick around, but then again, like when you're used to it, you're just like, oh, this is how it is. You don't realize it could be
Right.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say that learning about blame and criticism probably blame, criticism, and defensiveness, how I got defensive, how my husband got defensive, was a complete game changer for me. And I would say made it so that we were able to reinvent our relationship. And I imagine that's what happens in your programs.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We just we don't know what we don't know until we finally learn it. And so, yeah, when you take the covering off and you're like, oh my goodness, look at what's happening here.
Yeah.
Um, it's awesome. Like the light shines into the dark.
Yes. The light shines into the dark. Yeah. And you get to learn. Yeah. I think that's one of the important things too, is actually being open to um to learning a new way.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think such an important point
Yeah.
for so many couples. When somebody's not open, that can be, it can be like you're just, punching up against a brick wall. It's like there's nowhere to go.
Yeah. There's nowhere to go. Yeah. So, what else gets in the way of empowered communication?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not just these skills, right? I mean, the skills are great and powerful, and like you said, and like can be really life-changing. And for so many of us, there's something deeper that's driving the patterns that we're in. And it's not just the words coming out of our mouth, but it's the feelings behind the words. The resentment, the anger, the frustration,
Mm,
the grief, the pain. And usually, a lot of that comes from a long time ago, often comes from
mhm,
childhood, wounds, from early trauma. I studied trauma because I just realized so many people deal with it. When I say trauma, I don't mean you've been like held up at gunpoint or something or had a car accident. I mean, the kind of trauma I work with is called developmental or complex trauma, the kind of trauma that kind of we all have when your parents didn't meet your needs and couldn't fully take care of you or didn't know how or weren't available or, or hurt you and maybe consciously or unconsciously. So we all have certain things that weren't great in our childhood, that weren't perfect, and that can create what we call survival strategies, where you figured out a way to kind of overcome it. Maybe you had five other siblings, so your parents didn't have enough time to give you the attention that you needed, or maybe you had one sibling who needed a lot of attention who was in the hospital, or maybe one of your parents was in the hospital, or maybe you got weaned really early like I did, or it could just be something that couldn't have been prevented in a way, or it could be something more serious, like someone was a drug addict and or someone was in prison or whatever it was, or someone died. But any of those things for a child can cause a feeling of it's me, it's my fault, it must be about me, because children are incredibly
mhm.
self-centered. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like everything's my fault. And so even when you're an infant and you don't have words, that is your perspective. Like if my parents are fighting, it must be that I'm unlovable. And
Mm,
so when you have these early wounds in your environment, you take it personally. And then you have this sense of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of love, maybe I don't even deserve to be born or be here. And maybe you feel so a sense of insecurity or feeling like you can't trust people to be there for you because they're not consistently there for you. And so all of that can influence then how you show up in your adult relationships when you've got these lenses on of nobody likes me, or I have to be better because I'm not good enough and I have to try really hard to show people how perfect I am so I can be lovable, or people always hurt me, so I'm going to have my defenses up all the time and look out for the next attack and where's it coming from. Um, these are just some examples of what can be in the way of your capacity to really um, practice healthy communication and just naturally be available for listening and sharing what you need and want, or communicating in ways where you can be heard and understood when you've got kind
Yeah.
of various types of old strategies and defenses in place. So I hope that's
Yeah.
making.
Yeah. And a lot of times people go along in their life and those things work for them until they don't.
Really down. Yeah.
Until they don't.
Three divorces in a row, or maybe you go from relationship to the relationship and you're like, why does this keep happening? The same pattern, like, oh, it must be
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's when it's time to really look inward instead of keep pointing at, oh, these people are always mean to me, or nobody, is treating me fairly, or, people are always trying to hurt me. I was like, we tend to go there out pointing outside, but when we can start looking at what I'm bringing to the table, then
Mhm.
that's where we get the real change.
Yeah. Yeah. So just that being reflective about yourself, but in a kind of way, because we talked about criticism and the difference between being self-critical and being reflective and curious in a loving way.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that struck me, what you started off with was the feelings behind the words. and that being something that gets in the way of empowered communication. So that, and that if you just say a little bit more about that, because I think that a lot of times we spend a lot of like someone says something and we attach to the words, but actually learning to listen through more like a wider lens than just our ears.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a big one. I was just talking about this yesterday with someone. It's like if someone says like you never take out the trash or whatever,
The
there,
trash is
there's
always good.
yeah, there's that. Those are the words, right? And you're like, yes, I do. You don't see what I do around here or whatever. Um, but what's really going on is like, oh, you don't see me. That maybe that's the real pain here is you don't really get my contribution, and that hurts. And I feel sad about that. And that might be the real feeling. Or
Yeah.
it might be anger, like, how, I do take out the trash. How could you not get that? But that might be the real feeling underneath when you're having this feedback is like the anger that once again, you're not being appreciated or something
Yeah.
like
And appreciation is just so important to having a good relationship, really, not just with your primary partner, but with anyone.
that. Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree. Yeah, I
Yeah.
teach that in my workshops and trainings. It's kind of this lost art, right? That we don't realize
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
important.
It is a lost art. And it is again, that's another, it was a game changer. It was a game changer for me. And I think it, in a way, it goes next to criticism because, criticism, you're pointing out what someone's doing wrong, and appreciation, you're seeing what they're doing right. But actually learning, and you do this too. It's like, it's a practice. You gotta, if you didn't learn how to do that, if you didn't learn how to appreciate,
Yeah,
it's just, you have to learn that. It doesn't just happen overnight.
agreed. Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to train our brains to look at the world differently and consider what we're
Right.
putting
Yeah.
in our, yeah. Yeah, I like these tips I'm going to share. They are kind of contextual, like laying the scene for a healthy, positive, interactive communication to occur, conversation to occur. So the first one is eye contact. And again, sort of like a lost art these days when most of us are like too much on our phones and like, yeah, we're looking at our phone, but like, yeah, I heard what you said. Yeah,
Um,
and you go to restaurants and you see everyone sitting at the table with their phones in their faces. So
yeah.
it's sad. And however, so like I feel missed when I'm speaking and I'm not getting eye contact. And it's kind of also for me an old childhood wound because my mother used to look at the paper all the time and kind of lose herself and not hear me. So anyway, for me, I put it as a very foundational and a number one. Like when we have eye contact, it's like I already get the feeling that you're listening, unless you're like I can tell your eyes are all over and you're thinking about something else. But most of the time when it's real eye contact, it's like, you're with me. It's like you're doing your best to pay attention. And then I feel more willing to share and to share more vulnerably when
Mhm.
I have that sense. So it can just create, yeah, a feeling of being held and seen,
Mm.
obviously, and heard. So I think that's an important piece for having a productive, connected conversation. And I'm not saying 100% of the time you should have eye contact. Maybe you're cooking together and you're just, hey, did you get the onions? Yeah, you don't have to like have, amazing eye contact or something like that, or you're driving down the road, so there's times when it's not as important. But if you really want to have a meaningful, important conversation, this is a good foundational piece to have in place. And I like to say that sometimes there are people who are really uncomfortable with eye contact and it makes them anxious and they want to do anything but look in your eyes. And so if that's you and you're listening right now and you're like, I can't do that, I want to say that's okay. Just know that it's something you can learn to do, and it might be that often is about early trauma when you're having trouble with eye contact. So I would just encourage you to get support with that and just know that it can shift and you could get more comfortable and that, you could say to someone, I want to look at you, but I'm uncomfortable doing that right now, or, whatever. You can also communicate about that if like you're trying, but it's not, it's hard for you. So just to put that into space, because sometimes it is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's number one. And then number two is consent. And that's a real buzzword these days, which I'm happy about. And so consent is like, if you want to have an important conversation, make sure the person you're wanting to have that with is actually available. And I don't mean just available in the moment, in the space physically, but they're available emotionally. They didn't just walk in the door with like, oh my God, I had the crappiest day, and you're like, hey, we got to talk, They can put their head, they can put whatever aside emotionally and be there for you, that they're available physically, not only with their body, but maybe sometimes physically someone's exhausted and they're like, I can't even be present because I just like, I'm going to fall asleep. Or maybe they're starving and they have to eat something in order to be present. So they have time, they have energy, they have, capacity to give you their attention. So that when you ask for that, hey, when's a good time? I want to have this conversation, you're just more likely when you can agree on that, you get consent, yes, it's a good time, then you're just more likely to set yourself up for that more positive interaction than if you just
Oh.
spring it on someone when they're like not feeling to talk.
Yes, I resonate with that because I know that I was one of those who would like want to jump on it, like, okay, I've been thinking about this all day long and you're finally home. So let's do it.
Right.
So, what are 3 communication tips you can share with us today?
And so often there is this, I see that in my practice a lot with maybe there's gender differences in that, but someone comes home and they've been working all day and they're like, oh, I just need some space. I just need to sit on the porch and have a beer or turn on the TV and tune out or read the paper or take a bath or whatever. And they don't want to have more interaction and like be bombarded with like a need. So it's really, you're going to help your relationship if you can be sensitive to that. And for both parties to be like, actually, it's not a good time. Give me a half hour and then I can be present for you. So the person who needs the space needs to know that and be able to speak to that as well as the other person can be asking for what
Yeah.
they need or sensitive to the other person too.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got 2.
Got
What's the
two, one
third?
more. Reflective listening. And this is,
Mhm.
you've been doing that with me and it's another way of making a connection and really showing someone, we've done the eye contact, but this is like next level of like, okay, this is what I heard you say, and it doesn't have to be 100% repetition of what someone says, but just so they get you're following them. So you reflect back a little bit. So is this what I get you're saying, or this is what I heard, or like tell me if I'm following you. And so just to you can say words like that to show that you're hearing along with like nodding and your eye contact. And again, you're gonna support like more connection through a conversation.
Yeah.
So you can say these aren't like direct communication skills, like what to say right now, but these are setting the tone. And these are supporting, again, the context for this communication that you want it to have happen in a better way.
Yeah, well, I think all 3 of those really, like you said, they give the context. Like, how can I make myself, how can I create myself to be a better listener, a better partner by listening, by understanding, and being a little bit flexible?
Mhm. Yeah, and being available in the
Yeah.
same. Yeah.
Yeah, and all those contribute to what we talked about at the very beginning, which was the importance of being got, like how that makes people feel. It really makes a difference. And I noticed that even when, as I've learned to be a better listener over the last 15 years or so, uh, that just that, even doing that with my kids or my parents, so not just the skills that I learned in my relationship with my husband, but I've just they've been so useful in other things that in other relationships.
Absolutely. It's like across the board. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone
Yeah.
wants to be, whether it's the cashier and you're just like, thank you. You can appreciate,
Yeah.
like really see them, or,
Yeah.
or delivering your mail. But
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, Robyn, I know you have a free communication training coming up. Can you tell us more about it and how we can find it?
yeah, I'd love to. So the communication training is called the Connection Code, Mastering Authentic and Loving Communication. And so this is like jumping off from what we just talked about, those three keys that I gave here. This communication training is going to give you the actual next steps for like how to say stuff, how to get heard and understood, how to make a better connection, how to avoid defensiveness, how to avoid arguments by how you word things, and again, the context you create. So it's powerful. It's free, by the way, and it's for women only, because I like a women only space, and there's something really sweet that happens in that container.
Mhm.
It's about an hour a day for 4 days. And I hope people come. I've seen many people make a huge shift in that training in such a short period of time by getting these tips, these skills, these practical skills. I give you kind of assignments so that you can go and practice them during the training. And then, the more you implement, the more you receive. So it can be life changing for people. So
Yeah.
I can find it is wherever this video is hosted. There's going to be a link below that Meg's going to put there, and that will take you right to that training to sign up.
Yeah. And so tell me the dates again.
Yes, it starts March 17th, and this is
Okay.
2025. If you happen to miss that, it you'll either see like maybe there's a way to still watch it, or there's going to be a communication checklist in its place. So that
Mm,
it's the training. Check out the checklist. There's a lot of great tips there. But
yeah.
definitely, if you can catch this training, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Hundreds of women. I've done this for thousands of people now over the last several years, and
Yeah. And if you want to change your relationship with your significant other, communication skills that's the way to begin.
yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. And that's why I do it this way. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's
Awesome.
some solid skills you can start using right away.
Yes. Yes. Okay, great. So if you're watching this, the link is below and it's March 17th. And this is Robyn Smith, and it is the connection code.
Correcto.
Okay. All right. Thank you for being here, Robyn.
Ah, thanks for having me, Meg. Fun to talk with you.
Okay, great.